Hello everybody, this is Surf, and Abexilas is tomorrow at the point that I am recording this. Are you hype? Are you ready? Don't get too excited. Don't get too... I, for one, got a little too excited, and if you know, you know. But today, with Abexilas fast approaching in the next 24 hours, I am going to give you my 10 nations that I think, if you're observing the server, if you're playing on the server, 10 nations that you ought to keep an eye on as they shape and develop the Abexilas landscape. Now, this list is in no particular order. This is not a top 10, it's just a bullet list of 10, and my thoughts are on a cursory look around. Like, I haven't conducted any interviews. This is just what I've noticed scraping through a bunch of Abexilas Nation servers. And one quick caveat: a lot of these nations, not a lot, but like some of them, are artificially inflated in terms of their population count because they used a previous server that already existed. They didn't create a new server for this. And this primarily has to do with a lot of nations that are sort of the spirit of the Rathnir Eldham nations. Like, instead of making a new server, they just used the old server and rebranded it for Abexilas. But I think that's caveat enough. Let's dive on in to the nations that you ought to keep an eye on in Abexilas. Starting with our first nation here, we have the Aari Commonwealth. Now, the Aari Commonwealth is a hybrid culture between Rome and whatever thematic choice their province chooses. Now, Akari's got a lot of East Asian influence combined with Roman and some pirate influence. We got some Barbosans in there with the Aari Commonwealth. Now, what's important about the Aari Commonwealth is that it's led by Neo-Aurelian and is a spiritual continuation of Araka. Do you remember Araka? The biggest empire on Stoneworks? These guys. I decided to put them first, and I think they're worthy of keeping an eye on, just because of their reputation in the in Eldham. Everybody knows them. Everybody loves them. Your best conquerors around. I think this time it's been said among the national leadership that they're going for a much more sort of administrative, peaceful. Like, they want to get into the RP side of things instead of just being so highly concentrated on PvP. So we'll keep an eye on them and we'll see where it goes. Next nation. Second nation here, we have Geraria. Now, Geraria was an Eldham nation, and I believe their Discord is a continuation of their previous one, but don't quote me on that. They have a website. Did you know this? Did you know Geraria had a website? I didn't know this until I started researching it. But yeah, they got like this sort of dwarven gear kind of aesthetic. I haven't seen a ton of their sort of personal aesthetic, but just looking at the flag, I get like a dwarven / Art Deco vibe, which I think is really cool. Now, Geraria, after I've read their history on the website, it makes a lot of sense to me why they are so focused on like peace and growth and whatever, and that's because throughout their career on Eldham, they were just sort of passed around between more major players. Like, they started as a vassal of Tortuga, and then sort of the Silverians and Araka, and etc. But they have a very sizable Discord. They seem to be very popular with their citizens, and we'll see how it goes. Third nation we have here is Ishor. Ishinor's got like a federal government. They've got Holy Roman Empire aesthetic, but what I think is the most sort of interesting about them is, from what I've heard, from what I've been told through the grapevine, is that Ishor is a diaspora from another server called Terra Tales, I believe. And so these guys are going to be a bit of a wild card. They've got their own sort of separate identity. They all came together from a place that wasn't Stoneworks. And for a lot of them, especially if they are not members of national government, they don't really know anybody other than who they came over with. And so what we're dealing with is an entirely different player culture trying to interact with the sort of Stoneworks model, the Stoneworks player culture, and what people are used to. And I think for this reason, I apologize for like the editing of sort of this part, is I couldn't get a lot on these guys. They didn't have a lot of flags or national imagery or maps or whatever published, and so I had a hard time getting a grasp on them. But this whole separation in player culture is really going to be the sort of deciding factor in why I decided to put them on this list. Boulderov is next, and Boulderov, if you don't know, is a continuation of Alderash. Remember Alderash? They were sort of at the bottom left-hand side of Rathnir, real OG nation, sort of the counterpart to Viadoxa and Yimu Aldal, sort of the real OGs. Now, with these guys, expect a ton of veteran players. It is Alderash. It is guys who have been on the server since 2020. It's been 4 years, and they're still kicking. So these guys know what to do. They know what's cooking. They know how to maneuver. We're talking old school Rathnir aristocracy kind of behavior. So be ready. They're also, I expect, cherry-picking OG players. Like, they're going back to guys who have maybe not quit the server, but are relatively inactive, and it's like, hey, they're making a new world, they're shutting down the old worlds, you want to hop in with us? And they're like, yeah, brother, hell yeah. And so, you know how it is. Next nation. We are now on number 5, halfway through the list here, and we have Castor. And Castor might send a shiver up your spine because it's ruled by Crazy Man, the leader of the old Bardonians. Now, everybody remembers Bardonia, everyone's favorite nation in Stoneworks, Bardonia. If you are on Rathnir, you've definitely heard of them. If you are sort of OG Eldham, you might remember the Eldham Trading Company, the ETC. That was Bardonia. So it's being run by sort of the same guy, spiritual successor to Bardonia. And there's also rumors, this is relevant, should I say this here? There's also rumors that the original founder of Bardonia, Uni, is making his own nation, but nothing about that has been made public to me yet. So it's just a rumor, but something to keep in the back of your mind if you want to keep yourself at arm's length from OG Bardonians and, like, the hands, you know. I do know Castor is also cherry-picking veteran players, reaching out to old friends, old acquaintances, and trying to get as much experience within their nation as physically possible. Next here we have the Yuali. I don't know why they called it that instead of Imulari, but, you know, it is what it is. They're a continuation of Yimu Aldal, and if you don't know, Yimu Aldal is I think it is pretty much undisputed, the oldest surviving nation in the whole Stoneworks history. They existed for the entirety of Rathnir's lifespan. It's smack dab in the middle of the map, and they were here even before Rathnir in the previous iteration of the server Jagdis. So they have been here longer than anyone else, and they're keeping the tradition rolling for Abexilas. One might assume that they have the most sort of experienced players, and you're probably right. The level of experience that these guys are putting on the table is near unmatched to any other nation in the server. Oddly, though, they aren't one of the nations that kept their old Discord. They made a new Discord for this, it seems, and I'm quite surprised. A lot of nations here are using old Discords to sort of boost their population count more than what the active player base is. But, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. We're talking politics, we're talking strategy, and this is just one of the ways to do that. Now for number 7, lucky number 7, we got Isera. Now, Isera, for whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly how they got this other than, I guess, just being cool guys. Absolutely massive Discord community, over 1,000 guys, which to me is, like, massive. I don't think any other nation on this list is over 1,000, but I'm not looking currently. They have an East Asian aesthetic from the characters on their sort of ad. It appears to be Chinese, but I would not be surprised if they sort of mixed and matched depending on who their vassals are, what their sort of OG aesthetic was, etc. They're using a pre-existing Discord server, and this nation or group of nations that formed together to make Isera was sort of heavily affiliated with the northwest of Eldham, the top left. And so Yazuma, Osria, and the Constellation Alliance, if you are an Eldham player, all of these names might be familiar to you. But it's going to be absolutely crazy to see what they get up to. A ton of bodies to work with. If you want to see some good architecture, I guess go to their cities, because no doubt they're going to be absolutely massive with the player count they got cooking. Number 8 here, we have Angevin. Now, they're a feudal monarchy, just sort of based on their flag. I got a Dwarven/Norse aesthetic from that. They were formerly based in Rathnir, and the server was already populated and established before the Abexilas announcement. So pre-existing server. If I was making a tier list, if I was actually making a top 10, I think these guys would be number 1. They are absolutely cooking in their lore department. Not the biggest nation on this list, not the most powerful history of any nation on this list, but their lore department, whoever's making their lore, those guys, absolutely, like, kudos to them. I'll put a couple, like, examples. They've got, like, massive conlang, many lore documents with over, like, 50 pages. If you're a lore guy, Angevin is a nation you're going to want to look a lot in. Providing all these screenshots here for you to take a look at. And I think if you're lore-oriented or roleplay-oriented, you'll be very interested in this nation. Number 9, here we have Messenia. Now, they're an aristocratic representative government with a Macedonian/Byzantine aesthetic on their official server. They list, like, a bunch of other stuff that, like, intersects with their aesthetic, like Pan, Hellenic, and Roman, but like from their art, I see mainly Macedonian/Byzantine things going on. These guys are gonna be kind of interesting for their many vassals. They have like a few vassals going on, and with every nation that has a bunch of vassals going into the server, it's always gonna be interesting to see what happens once the rubber hits the road. What happens next? Are their vassals going to want to keep associating with them, or are they going to want to, like, seek opportunities elsewhere? Or is the mother nation going to try to resist? You know, it is what it is. But it'll be an interesting experiment to see how the vassals, the relationship between vassals and their mother countries react once conflict starts heating up, once they sort of get established. Lastly but not leastly, we have Arel. Now, I really like their flag. It's like a very sort of Russian Empire / Holy Roman Empire sort of aesthetic, but it's got this big anchor on the front. There's a picture of it on the screen. Just like the vision of a nautical HRE is such a fun idea to me. I really like it. Arel is a conglomeration of a bunch of subregions from around Eldham, and they have a sort of imperial structure. I put these guys on the list because of their sort of player count, their aesthetic, and just to see how this confederation of guys will fare. Because I have a grand feeling, a big feeling in the pit of my wallet, that these guys, or not these guys in particular, but like all the places that are like confederations or a lot of vassals or whatever are going to absolutely sort of just start disintegrating when rubber hits the road, when the things hit the fan. Insert another analogy here, but you got it. We'll have to see what happens. Abex drops tomorrow as I am recording this, and I am incredibly excited. I cleared my schedule for like 72 hours, and we're just going to be doing nothing but being on the server. So, how'd you feel about the video? Do a little tell people about your nation in the comments, and I will be making so much more content when the server drops. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy. We got a Twitter account. I'll link the Twitter account in my in the description of the video. And oh my lord, I'm at a loss for words. I'm so excited. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time. Thank you.